Really that late?
We figured you were here.
That's good, that's, yeah, I wasn't worried.
We weren't worried you were here. It was good. In good hands.
It wasn't a fun meeting the other day.
You were?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
It'll be the other way around.
They switched, well, it was the union one, and then the first time it wasn't that.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were stopped.
No.
Did you tell us you were the wrong one?
Yes, I did. I sat down next to her. We don't want you to get confused, Roger.
Any more on your break-in?
Is it 6:45?
Yeah, I've got almost 10
Right.
hours. That's set by my watch.
Looks like just a minute before 10.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. We'll start with a roll call. Councilor Bowie is excused. Councilor Cody?
Here.
Councilor Crafts?
Here.
Councilor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councilor Lunt?
Here.
I'm here. Councilor Pomelo?
Here.
We'll pass on reading of the meeting rules. I think we all know them. This is a public hearing. Nope, sorry. Going to go on to consent agendas.
First
Twyla?
item, Order 2010-42 to approve the minutes of February 16th, 2010.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 16th, 2010.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0. We'd like to insert in here at this time an in memoriam. Chairman?
Yes. The council would like to take a few minutes to recognize two longtime citizens who recently passed away. Laura French celebrated her 105th birthday on January 23rd this year. She passed away on March 2nd after having lived in Lisbon for 85 years. She married William French and settled here in town in 1926. She was presented the Boston Post cane in 2005 at 100 years old. She lived a full and wonderful life and will be missed by many. And just this past week, Alice Ricker celebrated her 99th birthday with her family last weekend. She passed away on March 11th after having lived in Lisbon for 95 years. She married Howard Ricker, who was our former fire chief for many, many years, and we all remember him, most of us that have lived here our whole lives. And they operated Ricker's Dairy Farm in Lisbon. She lived a good life in good health here in Lisbon. She, too, will be sadly missed. I fondly remember Mrs. Ricker at the trail opening of the Ricker portion of the trail, and she was very proud that that happened on her land. So she will be missed by her family and many friends here in town. Our condolences go to their families. Twyla?
First item, Order 2010-43, under ordinances, orders, resolutions, and ordinances, is a subdivision ordinance amendment for final reading.
We spoke about this a few weeks ago. It's gone back to Roger, and he has put in the things that we had asked him to do. Is there any discussion on this matter?
This is a final reading.
It is a final reading. Steve, do you have anything to add? No. I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we pass the ordinance, 2010-43, for the subdivisions ordinance amendments.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Thank you.
This order needs to be passed by a roll call vote. Are we
Does-
ready for that?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor Cody?
Yes.
Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Order passed, 6-0. Next item, Order 2010-44, under ordinances, site plan ordinance amendments, final reading.
This is also a final reading, as Twyla just stated. It was brought before the council a few weeks ago and also has gone back to be changed. Is there any discussion on this?
Again, this is a final reading on this particular one also.
Yes, it is a final reading.
I'll make a motion again that we accept the site plan ordinance amendment for the final reading.
Second that.
All those in favor? And
By
then we
roll
have to
call
do a
vote?
roll call
Again.
vote.
Yep. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Counselor Cody?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Order passed, 6-0. Next item.
Yes.
Order 2010-45, ordinances, a Board of Assessment Review Ordinance, final reading.
This is the same procedure. It's a final reading. The changes were put forth a few weeks ago, and it has gone back, and it's been approved. It is a final reading,
It is a
Mr.
final-
Larshall.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead with the same. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass this one also for the ordinance for the Board Assessment Review ordinance.
I'll
Second
second
that.
that.
Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Cody?
Yes.
Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Order passed, 6-0. Next item.
Yes.
Order 2010-46, town report bids.
This time of year, we always put out our town report. We sent it out to 12 different printers. We got 8 back. The recommendation is we go with Park Street Press. Everybody here was from the state of Maine except for one, but we've done business with them before, and they do a real nice job. So our recommendation is to go with Park Street Press.
Is there any discussion?
I would. Steve, this year, remember last year, there was a question about the idea of the report being as complete as it usually is. I mean, is this price actually pretty much printing everything we had last year in the report? And
It actually has a few more pages than
It
we
does.
have in the past. So we have something, letter from Governor Baldacci in it this year, plus quite a few other items.
because I remember last year, I can't remember the exact item, but I remember there was comment about something being out of last year, so it was
Yeah.
typically in the years past, so just
Everything's
want to
there.
make sure that everything's in place, that's all.
Everything's there.
Any more discussion? I'd entertain a motion on the town report bids, going with the Park Street Press for $1,280.
Make a motion that we accept that bid for $1,280 for Park Street Press.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Twyla?
Order 2010-47, selection of trail designer.
Ryan Layton will address this.
Good evening. Should have all in your packets. Memo, the Trails Commission advertised, well, I advertised for the Trails Commission, the Androscoggin River Trail design, which would include the right-of-way, all the environmental permitting, the actual design of the trail. And we did a qualifications-based selection to determine which designer we felt we're most comfortable working with on this scope of a project. We received 11 proposals from all qualified firms. Second page of your paperwork shows the rankings that we had after we reviewed all the proposals, and we're asking for permission to move forward with Woodard and Curran for the trail design work. The primary reason they were chosen was their familiarity with the original alignment. They did the preliminary alignment work for us and basically helped us get the money from DOT. One of the principal engineers on the project is a Lisbon resident, and they have experience with the construction of access under the bridge, which to the Trails Commission and especially myself was a major issue, is how that was going to look. You know, they were one of the only firms that showed us, because they had done the design at the Longley Bridge underpass, I guess, for lack of a better term, in Auburn. And it was nice to see what we have for a potential there going under the Sabattis River Bridge. So the way the qualifications-based selection worked is we reviewed all the applicants, chose the one that we wanted to work with, and then opened their proposal. And their dollar figure was $175,799 for 2.13 miles worth of work. That's within our budget of $180,000 that we had going forward with DOT. And I've discussed this with DOT, and they're comfortable with us moving forward, and I just needed to bring it up for you folks this evening.
Any discussion, questions? Mark?
That money's all set to go, right? I mean, basically, it's all funded at this point. It's just the idea of getting everything in place and getting approvals to move forward.
Yeah, and we're really anxious to get going now. We have the vernal pool evaluation is a short window in April and May that we need to get that environmental work done. So that was one of our reasons for getting going as soon as possible, and also so that way we can get all this work done and deal with the public process. So that way in the fall we can either bid it out to construct or whatnot for the following year.
Are they able to start as soon as possible? Are they?
Yep. They're ready to go.
Anybody else, questions or comments? Okay.
We make a motion?
I guess we need to make a motion.
I'd make a motion that we accept the bid or the contract from Woodard and Curran for the dollar amount, the $175,799.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0. Next item, Order 2010-48, King Road Street Light.
I had a gentleman from that area who had come before you before, asking about the street light. He asked again if we'd put it on the agenda to discuss it. I did tell him that we are in the process of counting lights and looking at lighting, light street ordinance, but I told him I'd put it on the agenda so you could discuss it, so.
Is there anybody with discussion or questions?
I'd probably start off just after the workshop that we had, Steve, I know the budget's been kind of a primary policy project right now, but has there been any further look at where that ordinance is heading at all as far as the streetlights or?
We are looking at how it's going to fit with some of the zoning things we have. Plus, starting tomorrow, we have somebody from Public Works who's taking the CMP map. What we've discovered is, and somebody else also brought to our attention, that map doesn't necessarily reflect the lights that are actually there. So we have somebody from Public Works going out the next 2 days to check every street to make sure that the marks on the map actually coincide with what we have for lights. And at the same time, he's going to mark the poles and lights that are not at intersections. So that was one thing we had all talked about, of having lights at intersections and just getting an idea how many actually aren't within either in front of a business or within intersections, interlocking roads. So I think it'll take him more than a day, but so I'm hoping I'll have that to you either the first meeting or second meeting of April. We should have that ready to go.
I guess what I would probably just follow up with that is, don't want to hold anybody off, but I mean, if it fits in underneath the ordinance as being as safety of an intersection, which most of them are lighted, I mean, I would like to think that we'd move forward with it if it fits within that ordinance, and most of the intersections are lit. And some of the back roads, I realize, are not, but I guess if it's going to be a safety concern, yes, but I would hate to just throw it in right now while we are reviewing where the street lights are going to be.
Is it out of the question to put the street light up at that corner and deal with the paperwork at a later date and get this man a light on that corner? It's a safety issue. He's brought it up repeatedly. I think that we are stalling on a situation that should be dealt with. And I'd like to see this council vote to put that street light up, and we'll deal with the paperwork at a later date.
My opinion on that is that in the past, we've had other situations that we didn't have an ordinance in place, and we came up against something with there wasn't an ordinance that governed it. And I just feel that we need to keep our checks and balances in place and have the ordinance in place before another streetlight is added. We do know that the corner needs to have a streetlight. There's no question about that, and more than likely, it will have a streetlight. But my personal opinion is that I feel that the ordinance should be in place. The entire grid, or whatever you want to call it, of streetlights in this town should be evaluated before anything is done. That's my opinion. Any more discussion?
I guess I have to second that. I do believe it needs a street light. I've been over there. And I think we need to get it done as soon as possible. In the meantime, I think if we could put some reflectors and stuff at the end of that road, at least so that they can recognize the end of the road that's there, because it's really blind. But the council has been criticized in the past, and has been watched very closely to make sure that we do everything, dot every I, cross every T, and I think the proper way to do this is to have an ordinance in place, and then have the decision made once it's in place. That's how I think we should handle it.
Any more discussion or comments? Yes.
Would it be possible, Steve, that by the next meeting that we have some type of input by Public Works, as far as if they are going to review it basically on that corner, so we kind of, I mean, it would be one of those things, it would be nice, definitely, if it's a safety factor to move forward with, but I do agree that we need to have some type of policy in place to make
I
that
think it'd
happen.
be good to have Chief Brooks and Buttons weigh in on it, on the safety issue, if it's something that's drastically needs to be done because of, I don't know if it has a high incident area or not, but it'd be worth looking at.
I've heard 3 councilors tonight say that they all feel that the street light should be there. Why delay it till something happens? If it needs a street light, put it in. We'll worry about paperwork later. Lives are important.
As I recall, I don't think there have been any accidents in that area in recent times that I can remember. I may be wrong. And I think that we just should put it up for a vote and take it from there. So I entertain a motion unless there is further discussion. Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to table
To table?
until the ordinance is in place. I
Correct.
put that motion for.
Motion to move it to another agenda is probably the same.
I moved to another agenda, yep.
I would second that if our next meeting, that maybe we could get some weigh-in from Public Works and Chief, and to try to get the information necessary, so at least we're making it by some backing.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling or moving the motion to another meeting? Okay,
Those opposed?
those opposed?
It's a tie vote, 3-3, so no action is taken.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to other business.
First item, Finance Director's Report.
Kathy Malloy, our new finance director, will, or Jessica Malloy will give our report.
Okay, Steve.
We're on track with our expenses to be able to meet our commitments. Nothing unusual there. You have the information in your packets. And revenues, we're on track with our excise tax to meet our budget with that. The revenue sharing is down from last year. We've collected about 50% of that to date, unless you have any questions for me.
How do you like your new job? I've been in a few times, and she's been with Steve, I'm busy, and so she's working hard. That's a good thing.
The days go by very fast for her.
I bet, yeah.
Thank you.
Next item, Town Manager's Report.
We met with the DOT and Longchamps last week. That was a good meeting. It was just a kind of an exchange of what's going to happen and how it's going to work with 2 different contractors on site. Longchamps has worked with them before with K&K, so we don't foresee, and they don't foresee any issues. They will be starting next week to start putting in our water system, so that pretty exciting. They expect it to go between 30 to 40 days to get it done, which I thought was pretty fast. And interesting to hear that K&K expects to get all the way to the settlement in Sabattis with their project this summer. I thought that was quite a distance for them. Chief Brooks and I met with Commissioner Greenwood and Commissioner Marcus Hirsch. They toured the facility. I know we talked about the dispatch. There's 3 or 4 different options. During the workshop, the council talked about helping support that move here to Lisbon in the process of putting together numbers and talking more with the commissioners to bring that project hopefully to close where they know they're going. I kind of need from the council, is that something that the council wants to say that we will do?
Okay.
If I could get an answer from sometime soon, that would be great. King Road as well is going to be get started. We are under contract with Crooker till June 30th, and so the prices are held from what we paid last year, which is good because we expect prices to go up after June. So they'll be starting as soon as the frost is completely out of the ground and tearing that up and fixing that, which will be a start of our reconstruction projects. Let's see. Planning Board workshop, we had an excellent Planning Board workshop with Pat Dalrose and myself and all the Planning Board members. We're looking at making some zoning changes. We discussed some of the things that are coming up on the March 25th public hearing. We're holding that at the Central School. We sent out over 700 abutter notices, and so we expect a pretty busy place, and hopefully we can answer all the questions and move on. That zoning changes, some of those zoning changes have been talked about, I guess, Roger, you would probably know, for quite a few years, and they haven't been finalized, so we're hoping to bring that to an end. That's all I have on my report. Questions?
Go ahead, Fern.
Steve, could you just, on the dispatch part of it, that must be time sensitive, the idea of knowing whether or not that's going to, if we're willing to do that or not. I mean, that is something that's coming up for discussion fairly quickly, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The commissioners would like to vote on it, I think, fairly soon. They need to see more numbers. They need to know where we were looking at, if you remember your discussions here with Chief Brooks, looking at a 5 or 6 year window that the counties would move here and upgrade all that equipment, and then if they move towards a complete consolidation with one center serving all of Androscoggin County, including the LA 911, that transition would happen after that, and we could take the equipment from here and move it into whatever location they decide where they want to go. But in the meantime, we felt, as I think Commissioner Marcus and Commissioner Greenwood felt, it was a prudent thing to go at a slow pace, not to race into a whole county dispatch. That was the advice that Chief Brooks was given from Cumberland County and Penobscot County dispatches, who already have that central county dispatch. So timing is crucial because they are discussing it.
So what you're really looking at us for direction is the idea partially about the funding part of it as far as for the equipment?
Right.
Is that what you're looking at?
That's what we're looking at, yes.
Now, is that something you would, I guess you mentioned about, we had mentioned in the workshop, is that, at what point in time would we talk about those numbers that we would need and whether or not that would be?
Chief Brooks is here, maybe he can speak on that?
Maybe not.
Excuse me, my name's Sean Brooks. Yeah. Question is, I honestly can't hear you that well out there.
All right, I guess the question I had for Steve was the idea of, I guess since our last meeting, there's been some more discussion about the idea of the possible dispatch consolidating or moving to Lisbon. And one of the questions was mentioned by Steve is the potential of some of the funding for the equipment, I guess, will equate to make a better possible, make us look more as a better opportunity to come to here if the funding was there for some of the equipment. I guess I'm just trying to get a handle on what we're really looking for as far as from us. You know, the direction is easy, but the money factor, I guess, would be the question.
Well, there's going to be a couple of different options that will be worked on as far as equipment to come here. And the preliminary numbers were all estimates, not firm quotes. And what's troublesome to myself and the manager is that we know that Lewis and Auburn is on a accelerated pace to get this turned around so that all of us have to go to L.A.
Right.
But as you know, the majority of that committee, 6 out of the 9 police and fire chiefs that were there voted to have it come to Lisbon. And we have one commissioner that wants it to come here, and we have another commissioner that is willing to talk about it. And she pretty much asked, what will Lisbon be looking at as far as sharing of costs? So I've got to put together a couple of proposals as to what those costs will be on equipment, and we'll have to go from there. But I guess in the meantime, we also need the green light to be able to keep the communications open with the county on this idea. Again, LA is going to be going through the accelerated process, and I heard from all of you at that last workshop that, and it was unanimous, that no one on this council wanted county dispatch to go to LA because of their $2 million budget being absorbed by county taxpayers. So we need to move ahead, too.
I mean, I would...
It's hard to
yeah.
commit to something when you don't know what the dollars are, but I can't give you firm dollar numbers right now. The estimates were around $450,000 to completely upgrade our comms center to a 4-position from a 2-position, but those, again, were strictly estimates. And I've already been working on cutting back on some of those through other vendors, and I'm sure we can get those numbers down, and there's another option out there, too, where we may not even have to replace all of our equipment. But it has to be looked at radio professionals that know the business better than I do.
I guess what I'd make I guess my option would be is, over the next 5-year period, if we were to consolidate, there'd be a savings to Lisbon as far as on dispatch, as far as for what we're expending right now in dispatch and what the savings would be for county. I mean, those are safe numbers to say that would have dispatch anyway, so if you can actually estimate the savings, what we'd be looking at over the next 4 to 5 years, myself, I would be thinking that we possibly could use those numbers of funding very safely to try to fund a project. It's the money we're going to be expending anyways, and we can actually do it in a way that we're going to update all our equipment, which you already mentioned is something that's going to need to be done within the next 4 to 5 years anyway. So it would be a good opportunity for us to move forward, update our equipment without really expending more than we already are right now, and possibly putting those numbers into the mix of what we're willing to put into it to make it. Does that make any sense at all? I mean, I know you have a certain amount of money that you would know that we would possibly save dollar-wise is when it comes down to if we were to consolidate, and whether or not you could compile those numbers to come up with a number of what that would work out to be.
It's important to know that the council is behind the process, and again, I think at the last workshop, you pretty much sent that signal, and we just need to get that wheel in motion. We can't get ourselves stuck in the mud, because if we do, LA's going to blow right by us, and then you're going to be dealing with a $2-point-some-odd million budget that's going to go countywide, and there's your savings right there, I mean, up front.
Chief, when do you think you could get some numbers together for us?
Well, when's your next meeting?
2 weeks.
The meeting that
Maybe
you-
your meeting after that, because I still have to deal with the county commissioners on the final report of that committee as well, and they're looking for that.
I suggest we just get some numbers together and then have a workshop and you formally present it to us. Maybe that would be the best deal.
Okay, again, the delay is, the numbers probably aren't going to be exact because they're not bid specific, because the vendors today just won't do all that homework if it's not a bid.
Right.
And they're going to be estimates again, but I'll have a couple of different proposals on all new equipment and maybe kind of retaining some of the equipment we currently have and not replacing it all. So there'll be a couple of packages to look at.
That would be good. Is everybody in agreement with that?
We could probably slip that in. We've got budget workshops for the next 2 or 3 weeks on Tuesdays and Thursdays on our off weeks. So if you can get them together, I'll slip them in to one of those so you get a chance to talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item?
Next is I have one comment first, I'm sorry. On the Route 9 project, I live on Route 9, and this is just my suggestion, that I know that they can't know every little delay they're going to make happen on that road, but a few weeks ago, they were changing the lines over in front of my house, and they didn't contact us beforehand. They just contacted us that morning, and I was a bit concerned because my father-in-law is on oxygen. He lives up the road from me, and come to find out they had done his the day before and he was fine. But I think that the Route 9 project, if there are going to be any specific delays, they should let citizens know in that area. If there's going to be, the road's going to be blocked off for any amount of time, or I don't know what other problems there might be, but I think that's important because it's a main throughway, it's a road that, a lot of people travel on, so.
And those lighted informational signs maybe or something?
Yeah, something, just because, you just.
Notify people if you're going to be digging right in front of their house. give them a call the day
Absolutely.
before.
Like you're digging up their driveway and they
Right.
can't get out for 2 hours or whatever,
We need to
people
know
need to
that.
know that. And they need to know ahead, other than, oh, we're here, we're going to dig your driveway out. So next
Yeah.
time you meet with them, maybe you could mention
They're
that.
here, they have a construction office right down by the settlement, and he's on site, the engineer's on site every day, so I'll speak to him. I'll have Ryan speak to him.
That would be good if we could.
While we're on the topic, Gina, did anybody look into the streetlights on that road yet?
We're looking at them.
There's what, 45,210?
I don't think there's quite that many.
I mean, there's a lot of streetlights they're putting on that street. You know,
It's hard to tell what they're doing permanently because they're continuing moving things around, but I'll talk to them as they're out there.
Next is our school budget presentation. Mr. Green?
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Tracy.
Good evening. What I'm handing out is an overview of our budget presentation this evening. The school committee has put together the primary goal of maintaining all of our current programming, all of our current programs. I've met with the administrative team. We've identified potential impact areas that we continue to evaluate and discuss. Again, I think there's some room under contracted services, scheduling, aligning our schedules so that we can share staff. And we are exploring other options, including consolidation of some of our services with neighboring districts. As most of you are aware, the school department has faced significant reductions in subsidy. And this evening, we're providing you the packets that you received last week. We're here this evening to go over those and then take questions that you may have in regard to our budget. But I wanted to provide you with this overview because I think some of the questions you may have may be answered with this brief overview. Again, our goals were to maintain all of our existing programs. One of the things that we look very closely at is our ED 279 form, which gives us our EPS formula. I know that has been, I see Norma out in the hallway. I know she's always brought that up during our budget discussions. We've worked very closely with that, and some of the increases that you'll see in our budget are a result of us looking closely at our EPS formula. We have a difference in our undesignated funds from this year to last year of $130,981. So that's a deficit that we have to overcome. We have decreased enrollment and, of course, decrease in state subsidy. Some of the areas that you will have noticed in the original budget proposal increases, one is in the substitute lines. Over the years, those lines have been cut. It looks good on the bottom line, but in reality, when we do have staff out, and we've done quite a bit of research on how many, when staff are out, we had to add money in there. So those are actuals or averages over the last few years that Kathy put in. So you will see some increases in our substitute lines. In co-curricular, you'll notice there's some increases. One of those is because we moved portions of the secretary position at the middle school and secretary position at the high school over to co-curricular, which helps us with our EPS formula. So it's an increase there. It's a decrease on the instructional side, but it's an increase on the co-curricular side. Adult education, we've moved the director to full-time. We've added one day to her schedule, and that was a focus on dropout prevention and also providing the services for students so that providing services to students to hopefully reduce the number of dropouts that we currently have. Any of you that have been to the school committee meetings, we've talked about it, provided a lot of information in regard to dropout prevention and how this position, or moving that to full-time, would allow us to provide services to students to reduce, hopefully manage and reduce our dropouts at the high school. There was an increase in facilities and grounds. Over the years, that was cut. We did add the $15,000 back into the facilities grounds line based on comments from community, the facilities committee, and the community and facilities and over the years in budgets, just because the amount of money that we have to look at our facilities has decreased. And of course, as you know, that's a focus for the school committee, is to update and maintain our existing facilities and grounds. You'll notice that there will be a lot of movement with gifted and talented. It's because it used to be in special ed lines, and then it was moved to regular instruction. So you're going to see a lot of negatives and then 100%. And so that would be a big increase, and that's just a shift. It's not new money. It's just money that the state asked us to report in a different area. Some of the, in January, the LEA, Teachers Association, was notified of potential impact areas, and the list that the list that was provided to them, I provided to you. You're looking at over potentially 30 staff as the budget stands right now, which is significant. But again, where we are right now, we still are in the feel that we can offer all the programs that we have. It would not be the same, but again, we've worked with our schedules. We would be sharing a number of staff, but the budget that we're proposing to you tonight does have these potential impact areas as reductions in that budget. On the back, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline. Things have changed. In the last month, in February, we were notified of our subsidy reduction. We also were notified on the 5th of additional subsidy reductions, which was the penalty money. We should have received an additional amount because we were in compliance with the state law, but they notified us that that law had been repealed, and we would face an additional $38,000 in cuts. The warrant articles that were presented to the school committee at that time, the reductions were based on the reductions on the form that you have now. So this form, the main form that you have, does not have these reductions in it. But the warrant reductions were $1,105,270. The difference at the time, including $38,000, we were at $354,720 to get to 0%. At that time and at this time, we feel very strongly if we have to go in any deeper than where we are right now, based on the number of potential cuts, we would have to look at reducing programs and services. And that's the school committee's primary goal, is to try to maintain all of the programs and services to some extent that we have right now. The budget update right below that, you'll notice that we did receive, if you've been watching the news, we did receive new subsidy reports in March. It was a subsidy increase of about $158,563. We had budgeted 9% for insurance. The difference was $134,822. One of the things that we learned is that with the stimulus money for next year, you have to remove it from your budget. The same as last year, and Kathy may be able to explain that a little bit better, but basically any stimulus money which is part of our subsidy, you have to show as a reduction in your budget. And so what we did is with those increases in subsidy and increases in our differences in our insurance, we kept the warrant articles the same as they had been, which left us at a difference of $281,399, which was a difference of $73,321 over the previous month's numbers. That is the amount that the school committee voted on last Monday to present to you. And so that's where we stand right now. There was word, I did read an email tonight. We have not received any official notification, but there could be an additional $5 million, I believe, put back into our budgets. I don't have any numbers to share with you this evening, but of course those numbers would impact the difference that where we are at. In the blue handout that was in your packets, our budget priorities. The first one is to consider program improvements, including any link to NEASC recommendations. I think that we have a facilities committee and the school committee administration, school department has really put a focus on looking at the high school. We have a lot of projects in place. We have a lot of potential projects in place with the bond that we plan on using the existing money in our budget. We have over $49,000 in our budget right now that we're paying for our portable leases and an expiring bond. So that $49,000 would be used to go into the bond, the $350,000 bond that we're proposing for an April vote, or that we've had approved for April. Maintain our existing 5-year facilities and grounds plan. Maintain class sizes and staff ratios. I've already notified the school committee that with these types of cuts, it would be impossible to maintain our class sizes and staff ratios. Our classroom sizes with this proposal in front of you would increase. Our classroom sizes would increase. I don't have exact numbers. We have to wait and see what our kindergarten enrollment will be. But again, it's you're looking at mid-20s, mid to high 20s in classes. So our classroom sizes and staff ratios is a goal that at this point doesn't look like it's feasible. Maintain professional development. Consider technology improvements, and to continue to pursue cost-saving measures through collaborative efforts with the town and area districts. I know Steve and I have met numerous times since I've been superintendent, kind of throwing different ideas out there that we can, share services. I know that we've discussed some things that we could possibly do to help one another out. So those discussions are there. I know that those have always come up during this time of year, or during the budget process, and I can assure you that we have had multiple discussions, and there's been a lot of out-of-the-box kind of thinking. These are very difficult times, and we understand that, but we are trying to provide the best education that we can for students in Lisbon. But again, these types of cuts are going to be for all of us, they're very difficult to imagine what it will look like. Kathy's going to talk a little bit, or Kathy is going to go over the next 2 pages, the revenue sheets. She does a much better job of explaining these than I do. Yep.
Okay, I am going to go over page 2 and 3 of your handouts. I thought it might be helpful to new and existing council members and public to know where these figures come from. On page 2, we have the proposed budget that's on page 53 of this handout, the $13,896,342. That's with the cuts that Superintendent Green has just talked about. But that does not include adult ed. By law, we have to keep adult ed separately. By law, it has to be voted on separately, so we have to keep the figures separate. Because this revenue sheet that you see before you is the way it is because we have to use it because of the EPS calculation. So, and in order to do the EPS calculation, you have to keep adult ed separate. And I will point that out later. The first section of the revenue is the anticipated revenue that we use to help lower the tax impact, which is our undesignated fund balance. And we also anticipate revenue from the lunch program that we use to help reduce the total expenditures. We also have to take out the local-only debt portion of our budget. In our budget is $104,000 for debt that the town pays for the Lisbon, part of it is for the Lisbon Community School, and the other part is for the bond that we have being voted on April 6th. And by the EPS calculation, we have to pull that out. So that is why that's taken out of this calculation also. After you take out the local-only debt service and the revenue, you compare that figure to 100% EPS. That is a figure that the state gives us on the ED 279 report that Superintendent Green was talking about. We have no control over it. The state says, here's your 100% EPS. So that's what we're using. We are above EPS by $465,000 based on the current proposed budget. But also, as you well know, the state does not provide the full funding that they are supposed to, so we have to include another transition amount, is what we call it, that the town has to pay, and that's an additional $283,000. So, adding that calculation to the amount above EPS
that equals your total local additional funds of the $748,000. So I just wanted to kind of go through that step by step to show you how we come up with these figures and where some of the figures come from. The next section of that page compares the funding from last year to the funding from this year. And last year, the state contributed $8.8 million subsidy for our schools. This year, they're contributing $8.1 million. So there is quite a dramatic, over $600,000 drop in subsidy. Also, the state tells us that in order to get that $8.1 million in subsidy, the town has to raise $4.3 million. So that's what is known as the required local contribution, because if you don't raise that, we don't get the subsidy from the state. So we have to raise that. And the town also pays for that local-only debt that I talk about, the $104,000, and then the town has to pay for the additional local funds of the $748,000. So that's just showing you how the funding comes about, how much we get for state subsidy, how much we have to pay for local subsidy. And then the bottom of that sheet, you will see our budget history. And that is just comparing the budgets from the previous year. It's just going from budget to budget, doesn't include revenues or anything. So last year, we had a budget decrease from the previous year of 2.45%, and the year before that, we had a budget decrease from the previous year of 1.78%. So you can see our budget has been going down fairly dramatically over the last 3 years, including what our proposed budget is. And on page 3 is showing you how we come about with the undesignated fund balance, which is we use that to help lower the impact of the budget to the townspeople. And if you notice, our undesignated fund balance from last year is the lowest it has been in 10 years. So we are scrimping and saving to try and come up with as much money as we can to go towards the budget. And I just want to point out that all these figures on this page number 3, are from the audit report dated June 30th, 2009. And the middle segment is just showing you how we're using all of our undesignated fund to go towards the budget. And the bottom segment shows you how we come up with that undesignated fund. And as I said, this is from the audit report. So this is all audited figures. And I just wanted to go through those figures to give you some idea on how we come about, and then I'll give this back to Superintendent Green.
As you go through the next page, page 4, that is what the warrant articles look like in January. Probably what you'd want to see. I'm not sure if you wanted me to go through the actual sheets with you, or if you had questions that you've already picked out from looking at these sheets, if I haven't maybe answered them with the overview on the increases, decreases. But the new warrant articles with the $1.1 million is on, thank you, page 53.
No white page. I'm doing this packet. I don't have white.
The majority of the budget, as you know, 78% of the budget, salaries, benefits, 22% operating costs. There's mostly, it's salaries, benefits, and then, of course, obviously, there's $1.1 million in reductions that will be taken out of these lines. One of the things, through your recommendations and through comments from town council, is that the bottom line, it's not necessarily where we made those types of cuts. We're trying to look really carefully at all our programs. We're trying to potentially either transfer voluntary or involuntary existing staff members to any open positions that we have in the system so that we can try to retain as many employees as we possibly can. And so that's why a lot of the reductions, one of the things, no decision, there's been no official decision on any of the types of reductions. We're hoping that we continue to hear good news from the state. But in the unlikelihood that we don't, we are prepared to look at these impact areas. And I feel it's easier for us to work with numbers, the warrant articles, the bottom line figures, and the impact areas versus debating what areas that we're looking at. And we're trying to look at everything and trying to be as out of the box kind of thinking, I guess, as we possibly can. However, we're running out of tricks because this is the most significant cuts that I've been here 8 years, and we've never had this type of cuts before.
Any questions, discussion? Vern?
I'll just make a couple of statements. What we're seeing is, it looks pretty drastic, but unfortunately Steve's next, so it's going to be an interesting evening. I've had the opportunity to sit through some of the school board meetings and actually kind of be a pain to everybody, to Steve and to Mr. Green, as far as on some of the items that's coming up to this. What we're seeing this year is nothing that anybody has any control over. Unfortunately, in the town of Lisbon, the council and school board over the last 8 to 10 years have been very conservative and actually cut everything right down to bare bones. And unfortunately, this year we've actually been struck with a situation where you're down to bones, but you got to cut more. And unfortunately, even with the town, because we're going to see next, is that we're pretty much in the same scenario. There's no perfect solution. It's not a win-win. It's not a win-lose. It's going to be kind of a give-up on both ends. So not only is it going to be the idea of losing stuff that we like, in the sense that anytime you lose positions, it's tough. But unfortunately, at the other end, even you see with all the work they've done, cutting as much as you can, there's still going to have to be a situation at the other end that's going to cost more. And it really has, it's a shame because the towns are getting abused for what's really happening nationwide and statewide, and it's all coming down to the local level, and unfortunately, we look at each other and want to beat each other up to try to make it better, but unfortunately, we're just trying to resolve a problem that's been handed down to us, not so much one we've made ourselves. It's not like we've gone out and expended a lot of money or done crazy things to get in this financial situation. So hopefully everybody will kind of look at it with an open mind, because every year we go into the budget season saying that we don't want to raise taxes and we want to try to reduce everything we can, but unfortunately we've been saying that every year, and we finally come to a point where unfortunately, we may have to give it a little bit up on both ends. So as we go through, I mean, it looks pretty drastic, and it is, and I appreciate everything you've done, because, I mean, there's definitely been some drastic thinking going on this year on how this is going to work, because when you start looking at numbers over $1 million, I mean, there's no way that you can cut those numbers out without actually, without making, knowing that you can make a lot of friends along the way. So I give the school board a lot of credit for actually coming up with the budget they did. Could it be better? I don't really know, because I don't know the ins and outs of the school every day. I just know they've actually cut a lot and been working hard to get where they are. And it's not going to be an easy process all the way through. So I wish it was just on the school side, but you're going to see shortly, if you stick around, the municipal side, it's basically in the same scenario. And Steve has had the same unfortunate decisions trying to make out where you can actually do more for less. So that's just my comment. I mean, it isn't something that's come up easy, and unfortunately this year we're going to have to look at probably losing on both ends, losing services and paying more. And I think that's just going to be a reality we have to come to grips with.
I think if you read the newspapers, what Fern said is correct. We're not alone. There are school districts and municipalities all over the state, all over this nation that are in the same boat. So, as Fern said, when it comes down to the local level, we're stuck with it, basically. The state can't help. Nationally, they can't help. So here we are, and we have to do the best we can. We need to work together, and we need to understand that cuts need to come, and they need to happen, and it's very difficult. Anybody else like to add anything, or?
I would just like to say, commend the school board and the hard work you've done. The money that you found is commendable. It's a good job. It's a tough situation.
Any other questions from council? Mr. Green, do you have more to present?
No, and I'd just like to say that if you do have, obviously if you do have questions, if you see something in there, give me a call, and the same thing with members of the community. If there's anybody has an idea that they want to share, we're open ears for sure, because we're trying to, like I said, protect the programs and people that we have, but it's becoming more and more difficult every day.
Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Eldridge, you're up. More gloom and doom.
You didn't get your budget. And it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Just so the audience knows and the public who's listening will listen on Thursday night, the council has not been through the same process as the school department. They're just getting their budget books, and we're just starting down that road of looking how we're going to move on with what we have to do for hard work. And again, these are our goals for last year. We wanted to hold the tax rate flat, maintain and improve the level of service, provide a level of service that we can provide. We heard from the public last year that they wanted a pay-as-you-go capital improvement program. We wanted to use technology to reduce our costs and provide easy access to citizens and businesses, and also make sure we provide a workforce and environment that is healthy and productive. This year is pretty much the same. We want to continue on to keep the tax rate as low as possible, continue the infrastructure improvements and capital equipment replacement programs, and again, collaborate with the water department and the school department to find savings. We want to try to maintain or improve the level of service that residents request, and provide a level of service that we can afford, and also continue to provide a workforce and environment that is healthy and productive. Historically, when we look at revenue changes since 2008, you can see the revenue sharing from the state has dropped. We've lost over the years $413,260. Excise tax in that period has dropped $262,780. Investment income, as anybody knows, if it has money invested, the interest rates are pretty minimal. We've lost $40,000 over the year. And again, our homestead exemption, since 2001 to this year, we've lost $1.4 million in reimbursement from the state because of our evaluation percentage. And it's the same thing with tree growth. We've lost a total of $77,000. So we're losing revenue left and right. You've held the tax rate fairly flat for the last 10 years. It's jumped up and dropped down off and on, but it's always been around the $25 per thousand rate. And as Mr. Green pointed out, you can see where the budgets, green being the school or municipality, and the school budget being the red, they've followed a very similar pattern. Again, holding the line, fairly reasonable. We had our good years, and then we continue to drop it down to try to save our tax rate flat, which it's been, we've done that. The 10-year trend is that you've held the tax rate flat. You've seen declining revenue. You've seen declining undesignated fund balance. We've tapped into that undesignated fund balance quite often over the last 10 years to hold the tax rate flat. But in the meantime, you've seen your deteriorating infrastructure. You've seen your assessed value drop to 56%. And over the years, you've seen equipment replacement delays because of the cost and just trying to be frugal. In the recent trends in 2007 to 2009, in this new grammar school LCS is 2005, you've seen a lot of changes and movement forward. New grammar school, you see a new trail infrastructure, the MTM building with hard work from Mark Stevens and his crew. They've filled it. It's a beehive there. And we've worked pretty hard to look at MTM repairs, and we have some grant money that will help that. We've seen some of our drastically needed replacement equipment costs done. We've seen Public Works building repairs this past year. We've upgraded our software. You have a committee, the Lisbon High School committee, that's worked real hard and have come up with a plan for renovation with some great ideas. And you've seen What Ryan talked about tonight, extension of the trail system. We're expanding another 2 miles. We've seen downtown revitalization come alive. We're extending the water system. Lisbon is part of the downtown network. We've unloaded the school at Campus Street through grant money. We've helped, so Brunswick Housing is going to be moving into that. We've done a lot of environmental cleanups of different businesses, close to $80,000 in grant money to help that. You've seen our police department get good recognition for their hard work and some of their programs. Mark has seen increases in his recreation programs. Beaver Park has seen increases. The library, Diane is sitting here tonight, she's seen tremendous 50% or more increase in use of the library. We're started today with the reval process, and we're rebuilding some of our infrastructure. Last year, we're starting again this year, like I said earlier, and the Route 9 and Upland Road project through state funding and some funding from us. So we've been busy, a lot of activity. In the meantime, 2009, 2010, we saw a reduction of $750,000 in revenue. We saw employees take a wage freeze. We were able to stay flat and keep all our employees through insurance changes, but we did see some staff move on through attrition. Over the last 5 years, Lisbon has seen a reduction in staffing of 14%. We've lost people, changed things in town office, public works. We didn't fill a position in the police station. We've seen part-time firefighters not get funded. You've seen 2 people less in the library and 2 people less in recreation. So we've been downsizing over the last 5 years. The challenges that we face this year, just very much like the school, we're seeing revenue shortfalls, again, in revenue sharing, and of course the school and their education subsidies. And we're seeing increases in our health care, workman's comp, our property and liability insurance, our fuel costs. We have aging equipment and buildings still that we need to take care of, and staff has jumped in and made some good sacrifices last year in wage freezes and a drop in their health care plan. This year, again, the school shortfall's a little bit more with the balance remaining, but you can see the reductions they've made. We're looking at a revenue loss of $363,000 and expense increases in $388,000 that we don't have any control over. Revenue expense differences, you can see our revenue, this does not include the money we put in from our undesignated fund last year. We put in $250,000 to offset the costs of a loss. This year, we're still down $2.3 million, or $363,000. And our expense is up, and we'll move on with those numbers. This is just one scenario on the expense side, and that's the difference of $523,000. The real increases that we've seen, like I said earlier, we've seen a $92,000 increase in our health care. We've seen a $228,000 increase in our debt service. The reval is an additional $58,000 if we move forward in that. And our county tax has gone up $9,000 this year for a total of $388,284. This is a proposed budget right now we're looking at for increases and decreases. I am sure that those numbers will not stay the same as we go through the budget process, but as they are in your booklets now, you've seen some decreases, some increases. You can see the 13% in the health insurance. Town buildings is mostly cost of fuel and some things we added in. We'll go through those department by department. We have immediate capital needs, which was pointed out when we gave our capital improvement budget in second meeting of December. The transfer station is in dire need of a container. We are not sure we can get through another year, and very doubtful. Public Works needs a bucket loader. We held off last year doing our police replacement, our cruiser replacement program. We only did 2. In the meantime, we lost 2 transmissions and 2 older cars, and we could get back on our program and fund that. And then we're trying to look at ways to solve some of the issues that we have at Public Works. We have a building that has air quality issues, it's not ADA compliant, and we've had to deal with mold issues. Again, these are some of our capital improvement programs. Fire Department Reserve, they've normally put in $75,000 over the years. Each last 3 budgets I've done, we have reduced that. One year it was 62, and last 2 it's been 50. The cruiser, if we lease a new cruiser, will add a $7,000 to their budget. The bucket loader will add a $13,000 lease payment for 4 years. And if we were to put on an addition to solve some of the problems with the Public Works building, it would cost us $75,000. And the 3-year lease on the solid waste would be $14,000 for the next 3 years. These are some of the budget options we have. This was the first initial request that came in. Each year, we get direction from the council, what we'd like to try and do, and we look at our capital programs, and department heads take their budgets and they put in what they think their needs are. This was the first round, and it was an $824,000 increase over last year's budget. And of course, then we look at another option, which was no wage increases, no capital improvements. That is about a $7 million budget, and we're still close to $300,000 over last year's budget. If you want to maintain the same level of service that you have now, in this proposal, you're still losing 4 positions, several through attrition, several positions we're not filling. But this would limit the capital improvements and give us a small increase to wages. The difference from last year's budget is $523,000. The difference from your 2007, 2008, just to show you how we've decreased it, is only a $40,000 difference from that year's budget. So we've dropped it down over the last 2 years quite a bit. My recommendation is and staffing, department heads, is to maintain a level of service. We are at a minimum. If we make any changes, we will change the level of service. But public safety, public works, town office, and library, we recommend to maintain that level of service. And to fund some immediate needs that we are in dire need of replacing and fixing equipment. If we continue the fire department, they're the only pay-as-you-go program we have. If I had looked at doing the pay-as-you-go program that was recommended last year with our capital budget proposals, we would have had to add another $150,000 to this year's budget to bring that in line, which we just can't afford. So we want to stay online with our vehicle replacement, get our public works the equipment they need to do the job. The sidewalk snow blower, if we drop this contract that we have currently, we're saving money from day one because we're not paying as much for that blower and the labor to bring it in under budget. And then you have the solid waste container that we need to replace. The Public Works garage, and again, this will probably be the first thing that comes off the table, but this is a program we put together. I was asked to do by the council when I first came. The new construction had been voted on, I think, 3 times, and the public turned it down. So this past year, we fixed the exterior brickwork. That was completed. We have a grant that we received from Efficiency Maine for $85,000. Some of that funding is going to insulate the interior of the building and replace a 40-year-old boiler. And if you put on a 30 by 30 addition, which is what we have looked at, it will solve the ADA compliance issues, it will improve the air quality, and solve the mold issue. And basically, the Public Works garage will be completed for the time being, and you won't have to look at that down the road too much more. These are some of the issues that we have. We've ripped out some walls and ceilings recently to try to correct some of the problems. This is just a rendition of what we would look at. You can see the 3 bay doors. That's the existing building, and we'd add on a small addition to the Public Works garage, enough for the director and 2 staff members. Why do we want to maintain the level of service? We've seen increases in calls for service from the police department. Those numbers are up. You'll see that in your town report when they come back. This year alone, I sat in my office, and every time I looked, it seems like the fire department was out making calls. There are already 83 calls year to date. Public Works has serious infrastructure needs. The library, in this economy, has driven her patrons up in usage. They're very, very busy. The town office, we currently have not filled staffing positions that have become empty. And citizens have told me anyway that they want their transfer station left alone. But another option we have is to make some major cuts. And here, in this particular one, I have cut all 8 positions, and I have eliminated all but the solid waste container from capital projects. And you can see we're still $142,844 over last year's budget. And this would limit your time. I've already gave staffing direction to start looking at budgets to how we would close operations for a day or two, and how we would do, and what that would do to the budget, what that would do to this level of service. But it is something that we seriously have to look at. Cost reductions, again, in staffing, it's $276,000 we'll cut by cutting 8 people. If you eliminate the capital improvements, that's $117,000 that you take out of the budget. What is the impact of that? You continue to have infrastructure decline. You're going to have less public safety and less available hours for the public in the solid waste, library, and town office. Impact on the service losses, it's going to change things, quality of place, your infrastructure. It's going to make it less attractive for a business climate. It's going to decrease the values in property. You're going to have less public safety. Employment opportunities in the town of Lisbon will be less, and return to old habits where we don't fund anything. This is the results of some of the survey that was done by the Revitalization Committee and what the citizens saw for the future of Lisbon. Good public safety, a new high school, and good education. Active downtown, job opportunities, especially for professionals, good roads and infrastructure, community center and a new playground, aesthetically pleasing Route 196, increased arts and culture. These are all things that were pointed out, just a few of them. There are a lot more. And this is what's happening with the Brunswick housing and the old school. This is what you can look forward to seeing with changes that have happened there. And again, this will be one of the floor layouts. So we're seeing good changes. And if school gets funded, this will be the start of your new school. So Lisbon has a lot going on. It's moving forward. And again, this would be a close-up of your public works. Correcting some of the deficiencies that we've had for many years. If you were to increase, and this is just an explanation, if you for every $370,000 we increase in expenditures or we reduce, a reduction in revenue causes roughly a 1 mil increase. And this is what, if a house is valued at $100,000 to $200,000, this is what it would affect, how it would affect your tax rate. You see an increase of $100 a year or $200, and break it down by the month, break it down by the weekly cost. If you had a 2 mil increase in a $150,000 home, these are the things that you'd see. $250 to your annual tax, $20.83 to your monthly, and $487 weekly. It's interesting when we're looking at all the things that we're trying to cut, and we're looking at services, and what do your taxes pay for? They pay for a lot. Education, police, fire, road maintenance and plowing, your transfer station, economic and community development, all your library services, parks and recreation, street lights, and numerous other things. And throughout the town and the school, you're employing over 370 some odd people. That's a big company. In summary, you have increases to the budget, basic operations, fuel, debt service, and insurances. Choices that the council will have to make in our deliberations. Do you want to fund wages for employees? Do you want to fund your capital improvements? Or do you want to fund the continuation of your reval, which will bring back some of the revenue that we've lost from the state. Again, these are your options. You can cut the level of service, 8+ if you want to go deeper. You can not fund any of the capital improvements, or you can fund some of the capital improvements. Or, there's a combination of things that you can do. And that's where we are. It's not
Good job.
pretty. Any questions? Just for the public's information, the council will be meeting Thursday night. We'll start working with department heads on going through their budgets and answering questions. And we'll take about 3 or 4 days to go through that in the next few weeks. And then it's deliberation time. Okay?
Any
questions?
Vern?
And Steve, as you went through that, it's very similar like what the school's dealing with and the school everywhere is. And if you start looking at the paper, it seems like you go to the city section first off to see where the local budgets are coming out to. And just looking through in the last few weeks, and most of the budgets are trying to wrap up, you see an average increase of 1.5 to 2 mils being a pretty much average across the state, what I've seen. So if you look at what the school was proposing and what we're proposing, no matter if you cut everything out, there's still an increase.
Yep.
I mean, so I think the factor is going to have to be is at what level of service we want to cut and how much of an increase we want, and it has to be a balance. And every town in the state of Maine is actually pretty much seeing the same revenue shortfall that we are. So, I mean, it's kind of unreasonable to think that would be any less than average when it comes to across the state of Maine of what we're looking for cuts and actually increases in taxes.
Yep.
I wish we had a magic pill, but...
Yeah, there is no magic pill. Both schools, from what I can see, and the town, and I know the town far better, is that we've all downsized over the years, and we're at a minimal staffing level as it is. We haven't filled positions over the years as they leave, and we're losing 4 people this coming year, 2 through attrition and 2 that we're just not filling the positions. So we're adding to that 14% of staffing that you've lost since 2005. We've been able to maintain the level of service still, and that's commendable for the staff here that have been able to do that. But and I think I did say this last year, if the economy got worse, which it did, and got worse than I actually thought it would get, we don't have any place to go except start cutting the level of service that we provide, and that's the hard part. And now it's people, and unfortunately our costs that we have no control over, our insurance costs, the county tax, and those areas that's our biggest hit this year. $388,000 in debt service with our water system that we have to put in. We don't have a choice. With the health care, it's just out of that $523,000, almost $400,000 of it is costs that we don't have any say over.
Yeah, just one more thing to that.
Sure.
And one of the things, being on the audit committee last year, it was kind of eye-opening to the idea of when you look through the numbers and seeing what we were paying for a tax rate and how it dropped. It really doesn't make sense as time gets things get more money, more expensive, that we're able to drop our taxes without reducing services. But the way we were able to do that is we actually had a bank account. We had a savings account, and we were taking between $500,000 and $600,000 a year out of our savings account to actually make it look like our expenses were less. And unfortunately, you get to the point where your bank account, there's no extra money going into your savings account anymore, and it starts looking really low. And that's kind of what we ran into last year. We actually we were getting warnings that our undesignated fund balance was getting drastically low, almost dangerously low, to the point if we had a serious problem, it would be a concern. And we took a little bit out of there last year to make it happen. Unfortunately, with the audit committee last year, we found that we're pretty much to the point of, we haven't put anything back in, so we're to the point we really can't take anything out. So unfortunately, some of our, I don't think it was done on purpose, but some of the actions that have been done in the last 5 years to reduce our tax rate, we're actually paying for now. And unfortunately, in the worst of times, so.
And you're also paying for things that you thought you could keep putting off. Your infrastructure, your schools, your public works, because you just didn't want to increase the taxes. And unfortunately, doing calculations on inflation, and you had a public works garage proposal on the table, I guess, back in 2006 for $1.7 million. Today, that would cost you $127,000 more. So you see that kind of 7% increase in just general operations and how things go. And healthcare is the worst one. Healthcare has jumped dramatically, and I don't see it changing until something happens. So tough times. But council's got some hard work to do and decision-making and how we want to change things. So that's a start. All right? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you, Steve. We certainly do have a project ahead of us, and there will be time later on for more questions and comment. Next is
Audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium.
Is there anybody who, I'd ask because the audience is large and we do have quite a bit of other things to continue on, that it would be one comment per person and try to make it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I'm Don Fellows. I live at this end of town, down the street, member of the advisory board, and I have one somewhat lengthy comment, but it's one.
Okay.
And it's relevant because tonight you're to go into a workshop after executive session and discuss potential charter changes. One of those, if it does come up, as it was said to have come up, is the vote potential on the municipal budget that Mr. Cody's been talking about and others have been talking about. So I mentioned it last meeting, and I want to say it now before you have that workshop, because I have to keep my mouth shut during the workshop. After last meeting and knowing this item was going to be here, I wanted to do some research because I wasn't sure if my comments last time were impulsive or even insincere or not empathetic to the voters. So I wanted to do some background work with the charter and the state laws. I read our charter with reference to the powers granted to the town council, the process for initiative, referendum, and special town meeting, as well as the provisions for budget preparation. I read the state statutes that pertain to the powers of municipal officers and the process for petition by voters, and the sections that apply to the school budget and the budget validation process. And I spoke with our town clerk at least twice. I'm telling you all of this before I read a short paper, because I believe the facts as I express them are the facts, and because my opinions are in here too, and they are just that, my opinions. But I believe my opinions are well thought out. I have copies of this paper I'm going to give you afterwards, but it's not a frivolous matter. It goes to the heart of our type of government, and it deserves some very serious thought. So here's that paper, bear with me. Lisbon adopted a charter and the present town council manager form of government on July 1st, 2006, and as you know, the citizens vested all of the powers in the town into the town council at that time. That includes all the fiscal, prudential, and municipal affairs. That's a quote. I feel that was a positive move for the town, and for several reasons. This new government is a true representative form of government in which the citizens have elected officials from the several political divisions within the town. Those elected officials have the responsibility of representing not only the interests of their constituencies, but also the interests of the community as a whole. It can be considered an awesome responsibility, but one in which the citizens of the entire town can feel fully represented. This form of government is likely to suffer some weak moments and imperfect decisions, but will still represent all of the citizens, not just some. The voting process for the town council, by its very nature, will likely be more representative than that of the previous town meeting selectman form of government. We all know that citizens are busy, and many times they tend to stay away from town meeting unless their special attention is needed for one or several items. There are very many instances where motions and votes have been affected, sometimes intentionally by skewed or minimal voter attendance. While counselors will not always be knowledgeable and informed on given subject, they are likely to become more experienced and educated over the term of their office, giving them more expertise overall than is held by the general public. The business of the community may not move at a rapid pace, but it seems likely that movement on issues will generally be speedier for the town. There already is a kind of override process where citizens have the power to reconsider any budget appropriation at a special town meeting by petition. That petition is begun by any 5 qualified voters who in turn collect the signatures of at least 15% of the number of qualified voters who cast votes for the governor in the most recent gubernatorial election. The success of the petition drive results in a special town meeting, where at least 250 citizens must cast a ballot for or against. It seems to me that as a result of all the provisions written in our charter, the citizens of this town are well protected in case their own charter plan does not work. If the form of government that citizens selected fails for them with regard to the budgeting process, there is a fail-safe provision provided by town meeting. It also seems to me that each of the councilors decided to be a part of this new process for the town by running for office. By doing so, each one accepted the responsibility of acting for the public by representing those interests honestly and thoroughly, by doing the required homework, by becoming informed, and making tough voting decisions that are required. Anything less is passing the buck and avoiding the responsibility. We already have such a process for citizen votes on the school budget. I feel the process for establishing that election was flawed. It does not require any minimums for citizen participation in order to make the vote valid. As a result, some towns have seen continuous downvotes on budgets that have been lowered after one vote and then raised after another, with no approval coming after these votes. In this town, we had some of that experience last year, and each of those elections would have cost us approximately $3,000 if considered alone. And in June of this year, the third year of the school budget voting process, we all will be asked to vote on whether to keep that process or continue it for the next at least 3 years. I guess you can see how I'm going to vote. Lastly, there's a process for changing all of this through charter amendment, which is why this discussion on the agenda tonight. I feel that the councilors are correct and do serve the best interests of the public by passing up this opportunity for charter change and by not acting. If there is enough interest in pursuing the process so that citizens can vote routinely and annually on municipal budget, I think the citizens will carry it forward for town consideration. That process means the municipal officials, the town council, will put a requested amendment on the ballot if citizens petition for it by gathering and having certified signatures of at least 20% of the votes cast in the town during the last gubernatorial election. I'm at the end. For all of these reasons, as I've said previously, a formal action by the town council on this process is a bad idea.
He wasn't brief, but he was concise, so we'll give it to you. Thank you, Mr. Fellows. Thank you. Is there anybody else with public comment or question? Don?
Good evening. I'm John Wiersbicky. I live here in Lisbon. Been here 10, 12 years. Love the town. And I do have a small thing that I would like to see happen in the town. And with all the thing about the budgets, I want to say up front, it's not going to cost the town a penny. First off, I am a veteran. I spent 20 years in the Navy. That's what brought me to Maine, and that's what I love about it. I remember growing up, the military was not held in very high regard by a lot of the public. You see the Vietnam vets coming back, they were reviled, kicked, spit on. I'm very honored and humbled of the fact of the last 10 years or so, that has really made a drastic turnaround. And I think it's great. Some of the military folks are getting the respect they really deserve. I would like to see something like that happen here in the town. My wife and I came up with an idea. We put it through our town manager, who thought the idea was great. I'm just presenting it to you folks, and I'm asking for help from the entire town. Real simply, back in World War I and back in World War II, you would see blue stars or gold stars in some of the windows. And for a real, very brief history on that, if you saw a blue star in somebody's window, that meant that they had somebody in the military at that time. If that changed to a gold star, that person died in battle. Well, I think that would be a good thing for here, for the town, which my wife and I came up with, is we want to do something for the entire town. So I've arranged, we're going to have a little bit of room on the bulletin board. We're going to have a gold star posted for, blue star, excuse me, for every military person that's part of this town. What we're looking at doing, it's going to be, like I said, part of the bulletin board, little thing. Lisbon supports its active duty service members. We would like to have a photo of everyone who is a relative in the military of this town. We'd like to get their name, what branch of service they're in. And if you would like to get us that information, we would be happy to do it. Our name is in the phone book. We're the only Weersbicky there. It's really easy to find. I also work at the post office. If you have information, you could just drop it off to me there. That would be great. So, Councilor Shell, I would really like to get something on Jake.
Will do.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the public? Michelle? Yeah. First, I didn't see him until. Pass those down.
Michelle Trammell, Lisbon Falls. I think you guys all know who I am by this point. Just a follow-up comment, since it was put at the end as a workshop, which means that it's not going to be recorded since you would have already adjourned, and not recorded for the public to hear your comments, which I think is very important. So I would respectfully ask that that the council not adjourn for that reason, because I think the public should have participation and be able to view and hear the conversation. That was the whole point of asking that it be brought forth. If you will recall, several meetings ago, the reason that I asked for the discussion, and not that everybody's not entitled to their opinion, but if a citizen's initiative is brought forth, the language and verbiage for the charter change would be based on the citizen's initiative, not you as counselors. You don't have the option to change the language because we will have already written it for you. Based on the number of people that came out to vote, that signed petitions in the past when special elections were held, I don't doubt that that will come and that we won't have what we need. It's that feedback when we got those signatures that has brought this forth. So I'm just stating the fact of the point to you that the reason that this was brought to you and we've held off, I've given you guys ample time to have it up for discussion, was so that you would have that opportunity. Not because we're looking to do some special interest group or some other type of grouping, for that. I ask that we work with you guys to move forward with this so that it's not going back to the way it's been referenced in the past. I'm not looking for some special interest group, voting and things like that. It's to put it back into the hands of the voters, because that's the feedback that's been given through the petition signings and the enormous number of signatures that were obtained during that process. So that's where that's come from. It's not just been recent. It's been 2 years in the making and presenting it and asking that it be discussed. And I just don't like the fact that it's now going to be kept out of public view because it was put on the agenda. But if you look at the agenda, it's item number 12, which follows number 13, which is adjournment. And I just don't think that's really fair, and it's not putting it out there fully to the public. So I'm just respectfully asking that it be aired and continued as part of the regular meeting.
Is it possible for us to have it aired? There's no problem with that. It will be aired.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Are you all in agreement?
Absolutely.
All right, no problem. Anybody else? Like the gentleman in the back had a comment.
Hi, my name's Jim Casella, and I live on 33 Andrea Street. And behind my house, there's a 20-foot easement to the town for drainage. I have been over to talk to Buttons about getting this taken care of because it's all grown in. It's probably 20 years old now. Also, people are filling in this easement without permits. I've talked to Mike on this. He has found out there was no permits pulled, but really didn't want to do anything about it. Well, if it's his job to make sure that permits are pulled and stuff, then it should be his job to take care of stuff that is improperly done. A couple of the houses that have filled in have gone from a 20-foot easement to a 2-foot culvert, which cannot handle the water. It is backing up. People are under the assumption that it's runoff from the houses. It isn't runoff from the houses. It's coming off of Andrea Street itself for improper drainage, okay? Not only is it coming off, it's not moving, it's sitting there. I've gone to Buttons, like I said, I've gone to Mike. Who do I need to go to next?
Mr. Eldridge is taking down information. I would say that you should contact Mr. Eldridge, and he can work out what the proper procedure would be for that.
Which I have, and he said that they were short on budget and was going to address that, isn't
Yep.
that what we discussed? And where are we at as far as that?
Well, as soon as the ground, frost is out of the ground, Buttons can look at that and try to address it. I know I've been over to look at it with him. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how we would fix it. The problem we have is how we're going to get in there. Even, we have the right of way to do that, but.
I've told Buttons he can go right through my yard if he needs to go through there. I don't have a problem with that.
I will make sure Buttons, he's here the rest of this month. He was on vacation in April, but we'll take a look at it, okay, and figure out how we're going to fix it, okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else who has comment? Sir?
Hi, my name's Benjamin Berry. I live at 35 Andrea Street. The issue actually is we came down, we spoke with Mr. Eldridge.
Yeah.
We were under the impression that it was going to be put in this budget today, that you would be coming down with an excavator to trench it out. So therefore, you and Button had already came up with a fix. But now you seem to be telling us that.
We went down and looked at it, and we said we have to get in there and trench it. I don't know to what extent we have to do that to get it to work. It's quite a length of, I think it runs all the way down behind all those houses.
Entire length of the
So
street.
it's quite a bit of work. This is the time of year if we're going to do it, once the ground is thawed and we can get in there, hopefully he'll have the time and personnel to do it. We've had a light winter, so it's very advantageous to do something.
Okay, but you came to me with it as a budget issue at this point. That
It is a
you were
budget
gonna
issue.
do something, and now it's a budget issue.
It's always been a budget issue. It takes manpower, which I have to pay to take care of that, and we'll look at it. We've had luckily a very light winter, so I've got probably a little bit extra money in my budget, not a heck of a lot, but enough that we probably can try to address it, okay?
Thank you. Anybody else with public comment? Okay, thank you.
The next item
Yes.
is under appointments. Order 2010-49, appoint wardens for the June 8 election.
I will let you go ahead and explain that, Twyla.
Okay. You just need to appoint Sheila Gray for Ward 1 and Monique Gayton for Ward 2 for the June 8th election.
Okay, so do we need to just vote on that?
Yep.
Okay. Make a motion?
Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to appoint Sheila Gray to Ward 1 and Monique Gayton to Ward 2 for the elections on April 6th and June 8th.
Only on June 8th.
June 8th.
Just
only.
June 8th,
Just
right?
June 8th,
Oh,
yeah.
just June 8th, I'm sorry. I know you told me that, I didn't cross it out, sorry.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Okay, the next item?
Order 2010-50, appointment for the Board of Assessment Review.
We have 2 openings on the Board of Assessment Review, and we have 2 applications. We have a gentleman named Richard Long. Is he in the audience? Mr. Long? And we also have a gentleman named Eugene Elchek, who's also in the audience. I propose that we,
I make a motion that we accept both the people that applied for the positions.
yes.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Welcome
Ready.
aboard.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Communications. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add?
I do.
Go ahead, Brian.
All kinds of stuff to talk about, but try to keep it small just because we got a lot of stuff to go through after. It's been brought to my attention, I know Mr. Kraft's also, about some of the concerns about the personal property assessment. And what I really wanted people to take a deep breath if they get the paper. And if you do have a lot of concerns before you get really too worried about it, is to communicate with any of the councilors. And hopefully we'll get the information, because we're going to actually pass it on, hopefully to Steve and our assessor. What people don't realize is very much what is happening is nothing different that's happened every year in the past. It's just the format of how we're going about it is a little different, because it's going to be put into a computer. Even on my own business, actually, it seems like quite a burden to look at the way it's listed out this year, but once it's done, it will be computerized, and years forward it'll be a lot easier. So if you're a business owner in town and you got the personal property evaluation paperwork to fill out for the assessing, I don't have a heart attack over it. Just actually look at it, communicate with the town, and we'll make sure the process goes very quickly. I assure everybody it's not, what I've been trying to explain, it's not our way to try to balance our budget this year. That's not the situation of it. It is strictly the idea of putting the assessment in the proper procedure that it should be, and hopefully from years forward it'll be easier to do. So again, if anybody has any questions, they can ask me. Give me a call or stop and see Steve or our assessor. Just get all the information before you get too worried about it, because it shouldn't be as drastic as what it seems.
Anybody else with comment?
I just wanted to ask one question about the streetlight ordinance. We talked about bringing that forth on the April, will be the 7th meeting. Are we going to have a revision again of the streetlight ordinance to look at that, in addition to the grid of where all the lights are?
Yeah, well, you only have a draft at this particular time. So it's just, you'll be looking at the draft, and if they want to add zones to it, I'll have to get with Mike and Roger to how we would structure that. Because right now, the way it's written, there is no designated zone and how we're going to address it. So you'll be looking at another draft. But if you decide that you want to do something just at intersections, you can certainly do something with that. But you may not have it done on the 7th. It may take that and then the next meeting to get it finalized. But
I certainly just, don't want to make any hasty decisions, but I do think that we should try to move that along so that we can get some decisions, because this kind of keeps coming forward and forward.
It does.
May I add one more thing to that also? My hope with the ordinance, and one of the reasons I'm pushing for it, is I don't think that items like this need to come to the council every time for us to make a decision whether a street light ought to go up or not. I really think there ought to be a process where the townspeople, for safety and for just a basic principle, why the street light's being put up and have it put up. I hate seeing things get bogged down, coming to the council, and for people like myself making decisions about a street light that I probably don't have the background to be able to say yes or no. So hopefully the ordinance will be put in place and have it so that proper people actually make the decisions on the spot, not the idea of going through the process that we're doing right now.
Thank you.
Any other comment or questions? I have 2 items myself. Mr. Wiersbeck, that's the great program you're doing. I really appreciate that. We are working on something through the revitalization efforts through the promotion committee, and we're considering doing a promotion in November during Veterans Day month, honoring our veterans. We're not sure to what extent we will do something, but we are looking at it. It's been talked about, so maybe we could do something in conjunction with that also. I'll speak to you about it at another time. Also, it's very important that citizens contact us. I, too, got a lot of comments this week from people with this personal property tax. There was a lot of scuttlebutt in my house about it, and we happen to be a business owner, but what happens in these situations is the rumor mill gets started, and I do feel, and I went and talked to Steve, I do think that we need to give the business owners more information. There are some programs through the state that can kind of back that up, reimburse the personal property tax. Talked to Mr. Main about it. He's been helpful, and I talked to Steve about it. And but it's important, when you are concerned about something, it's very important to call your counselor, and it's very important to call more than one counselor, because it just gives us feedback. We oftentimes hear things, and things get blown out of proportion, and it's way more than what we can deal with because we don't understand the situation. So I'm going to speak for myself, but I hope I'm speaking for the rest of the council board and Mr. Eldridge. Please call us when you have a concern, because we may not have the answer, but we will certainly try to research that answer for you and come up with something and give you the programs or whatever it can do to back the situation of the problem. So also, too, something I want to mention, it's a little bit early, but Moxie Days is coming up soon, and it's always a good time for our town to just kind of shine. We had a meeting today and discussed some different things with Moxie Days, and just trying to expand on that a little bit with revitalization and some of the efforts that are happening in town. So be thinking about that. Be thinking about participating in some way. The Moxie Committee does need volunteers. We need lots of volunteers. As you all well know, it's a big event for our town. So we need volunteers for that. And it's only 4 months away, so that's all I have to say. Anybody else have anything? Okay, we'll be going into executive session now. We'll discuss our items, we'll come back out, we'll adjourn, and then we will go into our workshop to discuss the municipal budget question. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to our executive session, and then we'll adjourn and come back to the workshop.
Need a motion?
Yes, we need a motion
to go into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 405, 6C, Economic Development, Local Business.
I'll make a motion that we do just what Tyler just said.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Stand recessed.
We'll be going into a workshop to discuss the municipal budget. It's been brought before us by Mr. Cody that,
Charter amendment.
excuse me?
Charter amendment.
Charter amendment, I'm sorry. It's getting late, kind of like Norma, okay? A charter amendment, and it would be to allow the citizens of Lisbon to vote on the municipal budget. So we brought this tonight, and we brought it before the council to discuss it. And that's what it is. It's a discussion. It's a workshop. There will not be time for questions at the end. It is a workshop, and it's something we will continue to take care of as quickly as possible. So, discussion.
You want me to begin?
Oh, sure.
All right. Number one, I think that we sell our voters a little too short. I think that we underestimate what the people of this community really want and what they are really going to vote for. And if given the opportunity, and this was put on a ballot, I don't think there's a doubt in my mind that this would pass big. People will vote, but they won't come out and speak for a number of reasons. I think that we should give the opportunity for the voters to vote on whether or not they have this right to vote on their municipal budget. If the voters don't want it, vote it down, and we'll forget about it. And if they do want it, so be it. It will be the say of the voters. And that's my opinion of it. Everybody seems to think that it's, only me that wants this, and believe me, it's not. And I would just like to see the voters of this town have the opportunity to vote whether or not they do want it. And that's why I push so hard for it.
Anybody else with comment?
I just want to, when we first started doing this, I asked Twyla to do a survey of communities that actually vote on their municipal budgets. And so Twyla called town clerks throughout the area, and you have a sheet in front of you. It should be there, and it shows the town of Jefferson, Waldoboro, town of Bradley, Westcasset, Monmouth, Rumford, York, Jay, Agunquit, Berwick, Clinton, and Lebanon. And it shows by year, and of course, some of the communities didn't start doing their voting until 2008, like Rumford. Monmouth has a June election, so it's a little bit different. So you'll see areas that are blank, and that's because they didn't start doing this until later on in the years that we looked at, 2005 to 2009. And you can see she's listed the number of registered voters under each category, the number of people who was turned out for these votes at the time, and there's some that took place in March, some in June, some in April, so they're all different times of the year, mostly in the spring. And then underneath that, she put what the percentage of voters were that turned out. So to give you an idea of what you kind of are looking at for percentage-wise of voters turning out.
Anywhere from 10 to 38%. It's a wide range, isn't it? 9%, 8%, 7%. That's pretty scary. Berwick has, 5,000 registered voters. Only 327 turned out to vote for it, which is 7%, which, did I hear earlier, and I guess it's a workshop, so it's pretty much open discussion, right, as far as for asking questions also. The school, this summer, are they voting? Mr. Fellows had mentioned earlier, which struck my interest, was the idea. Twyla, is the school this year, if people vote no, they don't go, the following year, they won't go to vote on the school budget?
Correct. This is every 3 years. You must vote whether you want to continue to do this or not. Do you want to continue to take your school budget to the voters to pass it? And this is the third year, so we will have that question on the ballot in addition to passing the school budget on the ballot.
So it's not a state requirement, it's actually done by each school unit?
This is state.
Or is it state, it's everybody,
It was a requirement that you begin it,
okay?
and now, if you're going to continue it, it's done at the local level. Are you going to continue to vote this way, yes or no? If you voted yes, you'll see your budget voted the same way with the school next year on a ballot. If you say no, then next year the ballot, there's no ballot for that school budget question.
The school actually, it's actually held accountable from the school board and town council at
And the
that point.
council, right.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
I would think that'd be a great indicator.
Absolutely, that's what I'm
on
thinking.
what, if the
How
town
is this
overwhelmingly
working?
wants to put this, to vote on the school budget back in, and then why wouldn't they overwhelmingly want to vote on the municipal side of it? So it surely would be a good indicator.
The night that Roger was here and we talked about this, that he said that, we could move
You,
forward.
Mike.
The night that Roger was here and was talking about this, it was my understanding that he said it would take a while to put this together, to compile it. I think he even said it would be reviewed, I want to say at the state level, I don't remember if that was correct or not, and be able to get it out to a vote for people to vote on whether they were going to vote on the budget on separate line items. So I think that we're looking at a period of time anyways to pull that together.
But the vote that's coming, just so I'm clear, the vote that's coming for the school part of it is something that's actually already considered into the ballot that's coming up for the school referendum, right?
It's already programmed. We have
already
the question, we have the words, the language. Do you wish to continue?
I would be more than willing, like Dale, if see how the citizens actually react to that. To me, if the citizens come back and overwhelmingly vote the idea that they want to vote on the school budget again, I would take that as a hint that they would like to vote on the whole budget again. And if they come through and actually say, no, they don't want to vote on the school budget, I would actually take that as the idea that the citizens want the boards that have been vested in by voting to take care of it. From there, it's really an indicator that's already in motion, that's actually going to work through. To me, that's going to be a great indicator whether or not the town wants to vote on the budget or not. And the school is actually as big, if not bigger of a budget than what the municipality is, so.
I think that the school and the municipal budget are two separate issues, but they're also one and the same. And it is a good indication of what the people want. I guess the problem that I have is I keep hearing that it's what the people want. I have not gotten one call on it. So I have a problem with that. I don't know why one or two counselors gets all the calls on these things, because you can hear hearsay all over town, but until I start getting calls, I don't have a problem voting on the budget. But I would like to hear from the citizens if that's in fact what they want. I hate to move forward with something that is not even really an issue with other than a small group. There's way more to this, and we spoke about this the first time that it was brought up. There's way more to this than just presenting a question, do you want to vote on the municipal budget? We need to look at how many times would we allow it to go through. It costs us $3,000 every time we have an election. So for the case of Monmouth, it was their police budget, and I can't compare apples to apples because it's not the same thing. But they had 5 times that they went to vote on that budget. I don't know what the cost of elections is in their town, I can't speak for them. But for us to go 5 times to vote on a budget and cost this town $15,000 without any particulars about the vote, that's difficult for me. And speaking of economic times, is it necessary? So I think why we're here tonight is we are talking, we are planning, and it is something, as Lori said, and as Roger Terrio said, it's something that takes a lot of planning, because you have to have all the logistics in order, or you could be in a situation like many towns have been in that don't have the stipulations. And I know Michelle has mentioned many times about a citizen's initiative. Well, that wouldn't solve our problem either, because there would be no specifics, there would be no parameters, and we need those kinds of things to go forth with this. So we need to be very careful in researching this. And it's not going to happen for this year's budget. It's just not going to happen. There's no way. Deal.
Anybody else want to comment before I comment a second time? What I would do to keep the ball rolling, because there is a lot of people that do want to have us keep this workshop moving along, why don't we take the next step of getting how each one of these towns, how they actually, the language on how they do it? And we can take a look at that and compare their ideas on how how many times they vote on it, what the parameters, what triggers that they don't get voted on again. And we could do that now, and in the meantime, we're gonna have a vote not too long from now in June that's gonna give us a great indicator. At least we're still working on this project and having it move forward. I mean, that's just an idea.
Great.
I work with a couple of people from Wiscasset that have this, and they said they didn't care if they went back 20 times. It was the people's wishes that was being fulfilled, and that's what they liked about it.
20 times in this town times $3,000 per vote is $60,000, and we're looking at cutting positions. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I understand that, Laurie, but the fact still is, the people can accept it if they want to pay it, and if they don't want it, if they do not like the budget, they have the right to deny it. It's their money.
But you come into what don't they like about it. Without a specific plan, you could have one group that happen to get out this time and vote against it, and somebody else that comes out and votes for it. So you have to have a specific plan. How does it go up? How does it go down? What are you voting for? And 20 times would be irresponsible to the town of Lisbon to cost this town $60,000.
And it's not just a cost, you do have a time factor there, too. If you drag it out for a year or more,
Exactly.
you can't get a budget.
Back to the original
operate.
budget
So
anyway.
I think if we're going to go forward with this, we would need to have some sort of a circuit breaker there if it fails 3 times and you go to a special town meeting or something like that, so that there wouldn't be 20 times of voting.
The school actually has that, right? At this point, the school, after the second or third time, it goes back to the previous year budget. There's something there. I mean, a couple things just adding on. I didn't get any phone calls, so I went actually out asking. And I was asking people, and unfortunately, there's people I know, so I'm not sure, it's probably not a fair equation, but just saying, hey, look, do you want to vote on the budget? And, of course, everybody likes to vote, and I said, very much like to do the school. And a lot of people say, well, why are you there? And I said, well, good point, but, what would you vote on? They said, probably I would. And I said, well, do you know what would you be voting on? They said, I don't know. What would I be voting on? And that's kind of concerning in the sense where, and again, I keep referring back to the school because it's the only thing I can relate to because we're already doing it. I mean, last year the voters went in and they said no to the school budget. I mean, without really any direction besides the idea of saying that they didn't like it and they wanted it to be less. It came back to a council and it went, back and forth to the school board. And, the thing that I look at is by the time they get to the point of voting, the school board has already spent months preparing this budget. You mean the same thing with the town. So when you actually change a number, you're basically just put everything a mess. The thing that bothered me last year is there was $115,000 out of the school budget that was taken away that they needed that didn't lower anybody's taxes. You know what I mean? Nobody in town's taxes went down because of that money that was taken away. It was actually just money taken out of the school system that no one's taxes went down and the school system lost out. So, I mean, does that same thing happen in town? I mean, are we looking at numbers? Again, I totally agree. I mean, it's nice that people can vote. Hopefully they voted you in place to actually try to make those decisions and to spend the time to get there before that point. I have concerns both ways. I really think that, like Dale says, coming to this school one, really how the town feels on whether they want to vote on the school budget, because I believe I think it's not going to go that way. I mean, I just think there's a lot of people that have trust in the school board. That's why they elect the officers, the people to do it, to make that budget, and it'd be one thing if the people that really pay attention to the budget as the process goes through, hopefully can see the process being done, and at the end of the day, it's not lightly decisions that are made to put that budget in place. I mean, it's not pulling budgets out of a hat, sticking them there, and having people vote on them. So, same thing with the school. I mean, Mr. Fellows made a good point. The first year you come in, you don't really know a whole lot about the budget. I learned a lot the first year. And the second year, I realized how much I didn't know the first year. And I'll just about figure it out when I don't come back anymore, which is a sad thing. But what I learned over the time as a council, when you look at the school board budget, and that's why they're on the school board. They make the school budget. I mean, it's really hard for the council to actually, even knowing well what their budget is, to actually make recommendations when that's what their job is. So you take someone that's 10 times removed that's in town that is just strictly going by what they hear down the street, and then they go in and vote on a budget that, yes or no, I mean, it could be just the idea of saying, hey, look, I don't want my taxes to go up, I'm going to go vote no, not realizing that, what the implications are if that's the case. So, I mean, again, and I totally agree that, you had made the idea that the voters, a lot of them are smart, and I think they are. I mean, there are a lot of people that really knowledgeably go in and vote. But I just wish they could give us the answers when they vote so that we could actually have a direction to move in. And that's my biggest concern, is the idea of not so much giving the opportunity to vote, but the idea of having the right direction to move forward and after, because we've actually basically already made our direction by the time we got there, and to kind of turn around and change that direction at that point would be tough. But I really feel that's why I asked the question, that vote coming up that's already in place, I think if the town comes forward and says, no, we want to vote on the budget, that's going to be a pretty good indicator that that's what they want to do, and I think we ought to make it, find out exactly how it would work on both sides. And if they say absolutely not, they don't want to go to vote for it, well, then I don't think they'd want to vote on the town side either.
Anybody else with comment or questions?
I'd like to say another small, I find it as a check and balance. It's very easy for councilors to sit up here and say, yeah, the voters want to spend X number of dollars on police, X number of dollars on fire, or whatever the issue or the department may be. But are we really doing what the people of the community want, is the question. And when you don't give the people of the community the opportunity to vote, the council is calling the shots. And in a lot of cases, it's not reflective of the community by a long shot. And I feel that if you put this out to the people, they will give you the reflection real quick of where they want their money spent. And in the town, in the past, we have spent a lot of money in departments that people did not feel necessarily where they wanted their money spent.
And that comes right back to a town meeting form of government where something was
Right.
brought across the town meeting floor, where the deck was stacked, either yay or nay, a for or against, and that's what happened. So we went to a council form of government to alleviate some of that problem. And I would hope that when people elect me or anybody else on this board, they would look at what our record is, how responsible we are as responding to them. And as I said earlier, I haven't had anybody call me on this issue. I have been an advocate of citizens calling me since I took my first seat on this board, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear what people want. And we give them opportunity for public hearings. We give them opportunity at least twice a month to come to our meetings, to come to our workshops. We all have emails that they can send us emails to. So how many more avenues do you need? Will we vote each line item separately? How will you determine that? And I think that's what we're trying to determine tonight. You need to have a stopper or a circuit breaker, whatever you want to call it, to figure out exactly how you're going to do that. But the people have the opportunity to speak. They've spoken before about the school department numerous times. We've filled the cafetorium up at the school, and people have come and said, don't cut programs. They've said, don't cut police, don't cut fire. They've told that in many, many instances. So that's where their voice can be heard.
But the problem is, Gina, is that exactly what you just said is why a lot of people want this. We have had the auditorium filled telling us, don't cut programs, don't cut the school here, don't cut the school here. But when we put it out to a vote, the people said, cut it.
I haven't got any calls either, but this is how I look at it. I think the more that the taxpayer can be involved in the process, the better. I really do. I think the taxpayer even has the right to make a mistake, because it's their money. So if they go in and they pass some budget and it doesn't work out, they also have the power to vote again and to fix their problem. So the reason I am willing to move forward with this, because when you only got 7 people running the whole town, and the best form of government is town meeting government, if everybody would come out. Problem is, nobody shows up. So now we have what I call second choice government. This is it. So, and I don't think it's not a true heartbeat of the public. I would like, after I make my recommendation as a council, for the public to tell me whether they agree with me or not. I really would like that, because then afterwards I can say, I did my job, and now it's the public. So that's why I think that this is worth putting out to the people. I think at this time, where we got so much on our plate with this budget, we don't even have time to be working on this.
No.
But I think we can at least have Steve get the information from these other towns on how they do it, that we'd have that information. June's not very far away. If we're gonna have an overwhelming public saying, we want to vote on the school thing every time, I would say, then why wouldn't they want to vote on the municipality? If they say, we don't want that anymore, I think we've got our answer both ways. I think it's the same thing, whether it's the municipal side or the school side. Let's let the public tell us by this next vote. In the meantime, be doing some of our homework in case they say yes. That's all I can say right there.
Why can't we put it out to the public? Do you want to vote on your municipal budget? It doesn't mean they're gonna vote on it this year. It doesn't mean, but we will know that they wanna vote on the budget.
Well, can't get on the ballot for that. It's too late to be on the June ballot. If we wanted to do a survey of some sort, or could
Not
we do
too
that
late.
separate? We could do that
We
separate.
do a non-binding
June-
survey.
Yeah,
just to know-
non-binding, yeah.
Just to have an idea if people are interested in that, when they come out to vote for something else, they at least indicate how they felt.
You would have to have it to me 45 days before June 8th.
How specific can you get? Can you just ask the question and that's it, or?
You can word whatever question you want the way you want it.
So then,
Non-binding.
even
under
with
it.
that, we'd have to come up with some sort of outline, parameters, something.
It would give us guidance in what direction to go.
Right.
Why don't we do that? I mean, that's-
Non-binding.
That, to me, is fine, absolutely
Then we
fine.
got some more indicators of what the public, wants.
So
If
we'll
it
be
comes
asking the
back
question.
overwhelmingly that they do not want it, forget it.
Right.
End conversation, done. And if they come back and they say, yes, we do want to vote on our municipal budget, then we can either sit down and hash it out, or we'll have to take other avenue.
I certainly agree with that.
I think that's the most responsible thing to do, because it gives them the choice, and then it gives us the time to set the limits, so to speak, and when we do bring it up to have it voted on, it will be in place, and at the same time, research some of this, and
How basic, Twyla, how basic is how it's spelled out for the school? Is it just a short,
Question was written in the statute, so you can't change it.
but I mean,
For the
is,
school.
could
So
I,
you could look at that if you wanted to tailor yours similar. Yes, I can
that would
get
be
you a
good. To
copy.
me, as close as it could be to the school question, so it's not like we're kind of
All right, I'll get
asking
you
a
a copy.
different, yeah, but.
The only one thing that I would really push for highly is that I think each department should be on their own merit.
But we could decide that after that. I mean,
Right.
the first
All the
question we need to ask
specifics.
is whether or not you want to do it or not. And if they say no, you don't have to worry about it. If they say yes, then you're going to have to figure out the formalities after.
And we'll get some ideas from them towns on how they do it.
These towns in this list all do their municipal budgets by a referendum vote. That's what we were asked to do. We were asked to provide you with a list of towns that do it. I think the only thing that's missing here is you wanted us to find out how many of these have been re-voted.
I think what they're asking,
Because
Twyla,
these
maybe.
are votes of
Yep.
towns on a ballot for their municipal budgets. Most of these towns are 3,000 people,
Is that a
4,000.
bottom line, or is that a per department amount?
well, that's what we need to know. We need
But
to
they're
know
probably all
specifics,
That's what you
right?
wanted to know, is
That's
was
what I want to know
it
is
bottom
exactly.
line, or was it, how did it look
And how
on?
many
they've got
times
it
did they have to
written.
go back?
So we should ask for sample ballots then. That's
Exactly.
what you're looking
Whether it's
for.
department by department or actually like the school, it's just one whole budget. as a
They
unit.
all differ, how
Yeah.
they do it.
They do
Yeah.
differ.
Sure, they're all
Some are
different,
grouped
but-
together, some are, like, public safety might be together.
But the yes or no would
Public
actually,
safety might be separate.
But it gives us-
Administration might include code enforcement and all those, like a lot of how we structure our budget.
And if we could pull that all together, then we could call some of the selectmen and people and say, what's the good part of this you like, what's the bad, what's the negatives, what's the positive? Maybe we could put together something better than the rest of them. I mean, I
I
don't know.
spent.
but the yes or no would actually help us direct that.
I
Right.
spent a long time talking to Mary Ann in York. She's probably the only municipality in here the same size as ours. And she
12,000.
said that it takes a voter 45 minutes to an hour in the booth, 45 minutes, because I think their ballot is broken down like you were
Oh, my.
asking.
Wow.
But
that.
you have, if you're going to be that long in there, It's broken out, and it's also, she said the cost of her ballots to prepare them are expensive because one ballot is only going to have only so many questions on it. So she has 10,000 registered voters, and if that's by 4 ballots, you can see how the numbers grow.
Yeah.
And
Expense.
And processing and, yeah.
not that it's a bad expense, I just think that,
Right.
you know, the method of how you vote by that ballot, depending on how long it is,
Right.
may be a concern to think about. The voter itself, how long it's going to take them to process the information, what's the most efficient way, where's your goal?
On the school, like the way it is right now, is there a certain percentage of the people who need to vote to actually to approve, disapprove that budget? And when it comes this year, as far as for saying yes or no about moving that process forward, is there a certain percentage or no either? It's basically just a majority?
One
Majority.
more than
All right.
the other, yes or no?
There's, there's no open discussion tonight. This is a workshop only. There's no open discussion tonight. I'm sorry. The time is. We will be. That's part of what we're discussing tonight, Michelle, is being educated on the entire process and how it works. We're all, okay. There's no more comment in this. We're going to leave it as a workshop. Also, something else I think we need to consider is looking at the percentages. Because when you break this down, you are coming up with an interest group in some of these instances. So we need to look at that. That's part of the process and how we're going to deal with this. And Twyla, I guess, just get us as much information as you
Well,
can.
I'll bring you sample ballots from each of the towns, and I'll also ask you, ask the clerk how long it took each of those ballots, you know, like Mary Ann's, if it was 45 minutes, or how long it was, or if you're talking about Judy in Agunquit, she said they just voted this process in '09, so she had zero report.
Right.
To report, but this following year, she should have something to report, so we'll get you the
You
time.
need to check what the parameters are too, which will probably
Right.
be in an ordinance format of some kind.
Correct.
That's why
Pick up that as
Get
well.
X number of, percent of voters, is it a valid?
Right.
Thank you, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I think what the citizens need to know and understand is that if you have an opinion or you have a question or comment, what I said earlier, you need to contact your counselors. That's the best way to do it. It's one-on-one, and contact more than one counselor. So if you have comment, please do that.
We'll put it in writing.
Or put it in writing, that's even better. Any more comment or questions?
I got another comment I want to make. I was looking for a number. I was talking to the counselor in Wiscasset, and she said that when they started voting on their contract, that was the very best thing happened to their government. They said that it was the one thing that they needed to do that made the difference. And I've heard the same thing coming out of Rumford, and they said when they started voting on their budgets, that solved their problem.
And that may very well be, and I don't expect it might not be, but I think that maybe if you can get a hold of that person and anybody else that you said you may know down in that area that isn't on this list, feel free to get that
The
information.
woman I talked to was Pam Dunning.
Okay.
She's the counselor in Wiscasset. And when I spoke to her, the best thing that could have happened to the
Okay.
community.
All right. Any more discussion or comment from council?
The only other thing I want to add is hopefully we can actually move better than like Monmouth did in a situation where they went,
Yeah.
6 votes, and at the last vote ended up being exactly what they started with. So they spent thousands of dollars to find out
Not
what.
just the money on that, but they spent a lot of money they had to borrow money to carry their budget forward, which cost them.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it was back to what they started with,
Let me just make another comment about Monmouth. The circumstance in Monmouth, there was a lot more to it than just the
Right.
budget, okay? There was a lot of,
Personnel.
there's a lot of stuff going on in that town, so that's why, part of the reason, it wasn't just necessarily voting on the budget, it was voting because of the situation. I'll be careful what I say. I had somebody from Monmouth come to my office, sit down with me, and discuss this whole thing, and so.
Complicated.
So.
They
that
do
was
this
a
at least every
unique
4 years.
situation. That was a unique situation, so I don't think that's going to be commonplace on this process, but
Possibility though, right?
it's a possibility.
Looking for a Motion to adjourn.
We don't have to
Don't
adjourn
have to.
because
Oh, we're in
we're
a
in a
workshop.
workshop. Any other comment from council?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam, for staying. Don't forget, I need signatures on the warrants, one on the town,